Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Herculean Physique, I'm here with Ryan Foley to discuss matters of great import if you're a physical culturist. Greetings, welcome, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Well, good, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad that I'm able to come and talk to you, and for you to provide this venue for me to come in and explain my path of wellness. I always like coming on here and talking to you, but for me, June is very special for me because June of 2014 is where I decided to go through and changed my life by joining the gym and started on my quest to go through and begin uh, the bodybuilding path that I'm still currently on. But I was just curious before. I mean, I just don't want to barrel over, the whole conversation. I'm curious how you got started. What were your motivations to go through and go on a similar journey as the one that I'm taking?
It started when I was a kid. I'm Greek, as you know, and I went to Greek parochial school, so most of my education was about Greek things, including mythology. And also at the time that I was young, you had the Sword and Sandal films, so the Hercules movies, they were out. There was a televised franchise called Sons of Hercules, which was a bunch of random Hercules movies or Sword and Sandal movies that they kind of restructured as being the Sons of Hercules. Even though one of them was a caveman who lives in prehistory, but still they did that. Excuse me. And there was a cartoon called The Mighty Hercules, which was made by the same people who made the Superman. And so I had all these images in my mind, and I always resonated with Hercules and other strongman figures, including Popeye. So I resonated with that. My father was a big man, and he lifted weights, and he had a chest expander. So he wouldn't let me touch them. When he was at work and I was busy, I used to take out the weights and use them. So I was always very much predisposed towards physical culture. Jack LaLanne was very famous at the time, and in comic books it was Charles Atlas. So my father, I think, had the Atlas course and the Jack LaLanne course, and he had a couple of books on isometrics and isotonics and basic weightlifting. So I studied those, and that's what got me into it. I started very young, and as soon as I could, I bought my own equipment and continued exercising. It's been something that's been with me throughout my entire life, on and off, mostly on.
Sure. Yes. So, just to kind of to parallel what you're talking about here. So, and I think one of the big questions that easily can be asked is, so we come on here and it's you and I talking about our successes and about our failures. And so an obvious question that a lot of people have is, hey, why should we listen to these guys? Why should we listen to you? And so I think my story is very relatable. There's probably a lot of people who have gone through a similar thing that I have done. So for me, the reason why we come on here and we talk about things, these are all anecdotal. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a professional. I haven't gone through and studied at colleges in order to learn how to do all the stuff that I do. I've done it through hands-on application and learning what other people have posted and assimilated that into my own workout. So for me, it dates back to 2012. 2012 for me is what I consider to be one of those watershed moments where it's everything that happened before that year, and then everything that happened afterwards. So, full disclosure, in 2012, I went through, I got into a pretty dark place. Um, my marriage ended, but then I went through and bought a house, moved into there, and it's like literally within the same month, we went through and I changed jobs. So I changed my career, moved into the house. So we were still living out of boxes whenever I started that new career. And so as a result of everything that I had gone through, I had dropped a pretty substantial amount of weight. But I had done it just because, quite frankly, through depression. I just went through and I just stopped eating. And I remember there was at one point where one of my son's teachers came up and, kind of patted me on the shoulder and said, "You need to stop losing weight," because it was an unhealthy amount of weight loss. But so then I get comfortable in my new job, which I'm still in today. And then I go through, start to get comfortable again. And so as a result, my eating habits went back to the old ways, and I started eating again. And then I slowly started putting the weight on. And so it was in 2014, in June of 2014, I went through and I made the conscious decision of I'm not happy with my appearance. I'm not happy with my health. I want to go through and I want to fix this thing. So since every video is probably someone's first video, so I'm located in Oklahoma. I'm in the northeast corner of the state, which puts me in the middle of the Cherokee Nation. And the Cherokee Nation at the time had started this initiative that very smart on their part, and they said, okay, in all of our hospitals that we have throughout the nation, we'll go through and we'll start installing these wellness centers. And so the idea is we're going to spend a little bit of money now, so that way the members of our tribe will be healthier and will save money in the long run, because they're not going to require as much medical care. So very smart on their behalf. And so it was free to members of the tribe or their family. So I piggybacked on my son's membership. And so that's when I decided to go through and start working out. So again, that was in June of 2014 that I decided to go through and make this change. And so there's probably a lot of people who have been in a similar situation as to one that I have been in, but it can be very overwhelming and they're not entirely certain where they need to start or how they need to go about it. So my goal is always to come on here and to talk with you, so that way hopefully people can shorten their journey, so that way it's not quite as difficult, because this has been one of the hardest journeys that I've probably ever been on. But I continue to go through and try to develop myself as much as I can by learning from a variety of different sources. And so luckily we do live in an amazing golden age of information where people can go through and absorb what they need to, but at the same time, they have to be able to tailor their program to what either they are capable of doing or what they enjoy doing, something like that. So I've been going at this for 12 years. The only time that I've taken a really substantial break was during COVID, whenever everything all shut down. And I had a little bit of a background coming in because I played football in high school. I didn't play basketball, so in the off season we had a weightlifting program that you took if you didn't play basketball. But that was more so there you're trying to develop raw power. So it's not the same as bodybuilding. It's a very different style of lifting. It's much heavier weight for a shorter amount of reps and things like that. And I think that's one of the big things that I want to dispel the rumor of whenever it comes to bodybuilding, is what that technically is. And so, because I think whenever you say the word bodybuilder, people automatically, they get this image in their head of the guy with the 7-foot shoulders, all the way down to the 4-inch jockey shorts. And you've got to have, 4% body fat. And they're all slathered up in baby oil to stand up in competition. But not everyone who is a bodybuilder necessarily wants to be in competition. Or it's a thing where everyone that goes and sets foot on a golf course, there's like 1%, if they're probably less than 1%, of all golfers shoot under par. But yet we still consider all those people that are out there on the links to be golfers. So if you go through and you play golf, that's it, you're a golfer. And so it's kind of the same way. If you're going through and you're lifting weights and following the bodybuilder pattern, then that's it, you're a bodybuilder. Maybe, okay, so you're not ready for a magazine cover yet. That's okay. You're still a bodybuilder. But so the difference between bodybuilding and traditional weightlifting is that weightlifting is designed to move a weight from point A to point B however possible. but where bodybuilding is more about developing a complete physique. So whenever I go in to do my shoulder days, I'm not just doing a set of overhead presses and I'm done. It's a thing where I'm doing an exercise to specifically target, the front delts, and then I'm doing an equal amount to target the side delts, and I'm doing an equal amount to target the rear delts. So it's about going through and developing that complete physique. But by going through and doing that, you're strengthening all of the muscles in your body. And so as a result, it makes you immune to injury. And I've been talking just a little bit. So let me grab a drink here, but agree, disagree? What would you add to those definitions, Hercules?
I agree, and I wrestled with the words too, because people do think of the physique on bodybuilding magazines and superhero movies when you say bodybuilding these days. So I've gone back to weightlifting and physical culture. Uh, my ideal physique has been for most of my life the physique that the people in the Hercules movies or the sword and sandal films had, which tried to emulate the statuary from the Greco-Roman classical era. And in one of my groups, I've something to talk about my goals. I have a picture of Alan Steele looking one way and a frieze of Hercules, a sculpture of Hercules looking the other way. And they look like they both went to the same gym and followed the same program. So that's what my particular goal happens to be. And there's a spiritual dimension to my bodybuilding. And in fact, this is one of the most recent books I had published, where I contributed a chapter. They talk about this a little bit more. In grammar school, I went to a Greek parochial grammar school. We learned about ancient philosophy and ancient religion and ancient spiritual practices. They didn't encourage us to follow these things because they're Greek Orthodox Christians, but they're part of their ancient heritage, so they taught us a little bit about these things. So there was a practice called theurgy, which means divine practices. And part of it was taking some discipline to reach the highest you're capable of reaching spiritually, and then to bring that spirituality down, and you can bring it down into a statue or an object, you could bring it down into another person, or you could bring it down into yourself. So I always thought it would be great to bring that energy down inside myself, and this way I become an active agent of the divine, in the world. And so that's always been part of my particular practice. That I'm not out to glorify myself or to sell anybody anything, but this is an interest I have, and everyone has different reasons. These are mine, and we do this thing for different reasons, but we do this thing. And exercising, it's like if you want to get muscles, you lift weights, you do certain things. If you're going to run, you do other things. If you're going to swim, you do other things. If you're going to dance, whatever physical discipline you want to follow, there are certain things you do. And then those things work sometimes for you, sometimes they don't work for you, sometimes they work for a little while, sometimes you have to fiddle with them. There's all these contradicting, conflicting theories about them. So part of your journey is to explore all these things, to experiment and to apply, and to share your failures. Like, for instance, one of our biggest failures was in trying to get bigger through diet, as well as exercise. I didn't want to take steroids or any muscle enhancing products. So I started asking myself, what did people who were bodybuilders and big eat before steroids came into the picture? And I found that almost universally they were describing a milk and orange diet, I guess, for lack of a better term. You drink over a gallon of milk, full fat milk, and then you eat like 6 oranges or some other similar like fruit. So I did that, and I was lactose intolerant. So it took me a whole year to build up to the tolerance to be able to drink a gallon plus of milk a day, and so forth. So I did that, and I was more muscular than I've been since my youth, and I was stronger than I've been in a very long time. And you can see my muscles, and so it was working great until I started falling downstairs, and then slowly the muscles started vanishing, and it's as if I had never put them back on. And when I went to the doctor after I started going down the stairs, took my blood and found out that my blood sugar was very high. So I believe that whatever predisposition I had for diabetes, and there has been diabetes in my family, This pushed it over the top because of all the sugar and all that milk and all that citrus. So I had the best of intentions, and I followed the best of advice. People who actually got big before steroids, but I had disastrous results. So I share that failure because it taught me an important lesson. Just because something is hoary with age or ancient or traditional doesn't mean it's good for you. And we didn't have the type of long-term studies back then that we have now. So because we're not trying to sell, um, the Hercules and Ryan system of bodybuilding or whatever, and because we're not doing this to get on magazines and to be in magazines and to attend events and so on and so forth, we're on these journeys again, each for our own reasons, each of us doing different things. But because we're on the journey, even if we disagree about everything else, we're kindred spirits insofar as the journey is concerned. So if we can, as fellow travelers, share what we learned from our journeys and maybe save the other person from making the same mistakes or learn something from the other person that you might not have even looked at or considered before, I think that has value. So that's why I think what is important. And even though we're both not magazine material at this particular point in time, we are people who've been dedicated for years of our lives to lifting weights or powerlifting or bodybuilding or whatever, or physical culture. So in that, we're sincere. And I look at it like gym buddies. Oh, I tried these vitamins. I couldn't tell the difference when I was taking them and not taking them. So I just stopped taking them. Or, oh, wow, I had this protein drink and it's lower in sugar and I've been taking it and I've been feeling fantastic. So it's useful, the information. We're not requiring anybody to do anything with it. They could listen to it for entertainment, or they could listen and try it out, or think about it, or that sounds interesting. Let me look it up on the internet to see what else people have to say about this particular topic. So I believe that for you, it's type of service as well, because you're a very spiritual person also. So for what it is, we offer it freely, and we hope that it helps somebody in their journey, whatever the journey may be in this particular area of life. So I think it's useful.
And now I don't know how to shoehorn in the fact that we are starting the Ryan and Hercules system, available now for $129.95. Operators are standing by. Have your credit cards ready. Boy, just to add on to what you're talking about there. Yes, what I've found is that, so whenever I first started this, I had a mental image of what I wanted to look like. And I've really come to grips with understanding how difficult that transformation is and what it requires. And so I would go through and I would try to find, so my motivation, like one of the variety of different motivations that I had, one of the ones that was kind of like the icing on the cake there, was that I always told myself I wanted to be able to walk my daughter down the aisle on my original knees, without wheezing. And, I wanted to look sharp in my tuxedo whenever I did it. So that way, whenever the officiant said, who gives this woman, I could proudly stand up there without being out of breath and saying, I do. But then you start to realize that if you only look good in the tuxedo, but you don't have a relationship with your daughter, she's not going to ask you to walk her down the aisle. So it's not just about the physical. And so that's really what I wanted to hone in there. So I was just, yes, absolutely agreeing with you. So what happens is we go in with this intention of, hey, I'm going to lose weight and I'm going to look better and I'm going to do all this sort of stuff. And then slowly over time, you realize that your motivation kind of starts to change, or you start seeing different elevations in areas that you didn't anticipate. And so that's where I highly recommend for people to go into a program, not just, yes, if you can get stronger, that's absolutely fantastic. I encourage that. If it allows you to move better, I certainly encourage that. I think that that's very, very important. But then what I have found is that it also goes through by studying and researching and figuring out what exercises to do and not to do. Then, in a way, we do kind of start to become scientists because we're going through and we're testing the data and we're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And again, what works for me may not necessarily work for another individual. So you have to, so I wish that there was just some big blanket statement that we could come in and say, you're going to do this or you're going to do this and you'll look like this. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. But by going through and doing this, suddenly you start making different choices. You start viewing the world through a little bit of a different lens. And so now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I've always made the joke, excuse me, that you're never going to get a call from me at 2 a.m. saying I need to be bailed out of jail because that's just not my lifestyle. But if I go through and if I'm not sleeping properly, that's going to go through and that's going to compromise my exercise for the next morning. I am the type of person, I do prefer working out in the morning. I like to do that before the day gets started. So that way the life doesn't have an opportunity to come in and sucker punch me from the side and derail me from my program. So I enjoy working out in the morning personally, but if you're not a morning person, it's a thing where I can't ask you to, okay, let's go get up at 5:30 and let's go for a run. If you're a morning person, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So that's where you have to kind of figure out what works best for you. But then suddenly all these changes that you're making, it's everything else kind of starts to develop around it. I've got to make sure that my gym clothes are ready and laid out, the next day. So now I'm keeping an eye on my laundry. I'm making sure that that's getting taken care of. I'm going through and you can you start looking at calories differently. And you're like, well, I could have one more beer, but that means I got to be on the treadmill for X amount of time. Again, I'm not a big fan of punishing consuming calories. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of punishing people by saying, hey, you've got to get on the treadmill for this. But you kind of do start to look at it in a little bit of a different way. And so there's the emotional development that comes with it. There's the social improvement that comes with it. Again, the intellectual part. And then it also goes through and it stimulates this feeling of optimism that a lot of us sorely need right now. It's very easy for me to gesture broadly at the world and go look at everything around us. And I'm a pretty self-aware guy, and I consider myself to be pretty darn optimistic. I smile easy, I laugh easy, and if I'm going to go through and I'm going to have a conversation, and I won't let an opportunity for a joke to pass by my commitment to the bit, hence the 129 operators are standing by. There was no way I was going to let that joke go past. So, but I consider myself to be this optimistic individual. And I think a lot of people can come to me and say, well, where does this wellspring of optimism comes from? And I know it sounds strange, but it does. It comes from lifting weights.
Right.
Again, it's going through and putting yourself through those rigors. And suddenly, I mean, if I'm doing Olympic lifts at 6 a.m. in the morning, filing a bunch of papers at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is pretty easy by comparison. So it generates this wellspring of positivity that I hope is infectious. And so whenever I go through and recommend that people get on a program, it's not because it's not me shaking a finger at them going, hey, I think you need to lose weight. It's me suggesting, hey, if you go through and you do this, you're going to start to see an improvement all throughout your life.
And that's very true. Like I got a very big compliment. I've shared it before, but I was in the Stop and Shop one day with my wife, and we're looking around for things. I was looking for protein based items, of course. And some guy I'd never met before came up to me and he goes, "Hi, you're Hercules." And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "That I don't know him, And he said that he was in the pizzeria. And he saw me walking, and he said, "There's Hercules." And the serving woman told him, "Yeah, there. He usually walks around town around this time." So he was dumbfounded because he didn't know who I was. He just looked at me, and that's what came into his head. So that was a big compliment for me because that's my Olympian ideal. So he, without intending to, just by going to a supermarket, what do you call it? Somebody noticed and made the association. So that's a major compliment for him.
Good. Yeah. I can, and I can see it. I can't, in all the photos that I've seen and stuff like that, with all the stuff that you do there around Tenafly, it's that all tracks, as the kids would say. But one of the big challenges that I've had to embrace whenever it comes to this whole thing, and it's a little bit difficult. So there is an author by the name of Ryan Holiday. He has written a number of fantastic books, and one of the books that he wrote he's written The Obstacle is the Way. He's written one of my favorites is Ego is the Enemy. So, spoiler alert for that book. In that book, ego is the enemy. And what he's talking about is, so the ego is that part of your body, or it's that part, your brain. I'm sorry. So it's the part of your brain that sits there and says, you know what, man, you're good enough. And so it is this fine balancing line that I found that we have to walk, where you don't want to be too negative about yourself. But then also, I've found that with every success that I get, I want to acquire more success. I mean, we've chosen a hobby that measures things by half a pound, one rep, just one more rep is going to go through and allow me to achieve a personal best. So that's a daunting thing that we have to go through and embrace. But so when the ego does not like failure, the ego wants to sit on the couch and remain comfortable, because that's where the ego feels safe. That's where it wants to keep you. But with bodybuilding, weightlifting, all exercises, really, what we're doing is we're having to embrace failure. We have to embrace that over and over and over again. Because what we're doing is we're pushing ourselves to the limit, because that is where growth lives. It's not just lifting weights. So if you want to see growth, if you want to see improvement, you have to go through and push yourself to failure. And that is something that a lot of people, either they're not comfortable with, or they're not willing to push themselves to get to. And so they're leaving reps on the table. But what this requires is for you to go through and really generate a knowledge of you have to be able to listen to your central nervous system, because I think there's a difference between that. There's going to be times where the mind is going to give up, but the body still has a little bit in there. And so if you find yourself being distracted, so for instance, cardio, I can go through and it's boring. I don't like it. I do steady state cardio because I'm not taking medicine. I don't have to be anywhere at a certain time. So I've plotted out enough time to where, hey, this is where I'm going to do my cardio. And I don't want to do it so intensely that I can't come back the next day and continue to work out. I think if you do that, if you've pushed so hard that you can't get out of bed the next day, you're doing something wrong. I would rather go through and instead of having 3 gym sessions a week that are 2 hours long, I'd rather do 6 gym sessions a week that are each an hour long. I think that's more beneficial for me. A lot of people don't have that kind of time. I understand that, but I happen to. So I prefer steady state cardio just because it doesn't drain me out of fuel as much as possible. So in going through and doing these things, a lot of times the mind can kind of take over and go, man, I'm tired. I don't want to go anymore. But then if I can go through and if I can find that distraction, if it's a good song, if it's an interesting conversation on YouTube, and I'm not looking at the ticking of the distance, if I can focus on something else, suddenly I find myself able to do a little bit more than I anticipated. So it's the difference between listening to your body, knowing what you are capable of, and then being able to flirt with that limit in order to go through and improve. So I feel it bears repeating here. You've told a story here before, but again, I think it's worth repeating about how you did more weight than you anticipated because you didn't realize how much weight was actually on the bar.
Yes, that was with breaking the 300 bench press. I couldn't get it. I can get within a couple of pounds of it, but I could not get that 300-pound mark, And then one day I was talking to someone, so I wasn't watching carefully or keeping track of carefully what weights I was putting on the bar. And I went and did my couple of reps with the heavy and thought it was. Then when I was taking the weights off, I saw that I think I'd done 314 or something like that. It was less than 320, but more than the 300. I mean, less than 320, but more than 300.
Right.
So after I did that, then I was able to do 300 and above without a problem. And eventually I reached 330.
And so I've been in that situation before where, again, I had miscalculated and I didn't realize how much weight was on the bar. Then I go through, I get underneath it, and I'm lifting. I was like, man, that was really heavy. And I was trying to figure out, so why am I feeling so weak, today? And then went through and did the calculations. But then also at the same time, this is something that can be incredibly frustrating because I have to go back and reference Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park and him talking about chaos theory. And so with chaos theory, it's you have all these little micro variations that go through it and can dramatically change the outcome. So there's all these different variables that we have to consider. And with lifting weights, it's exactly the same way. You can go through and so say you were able to do a certain amount, but then the following week, maybe you didn't sleep that well. Maybe you were eating something different. Maybe there was maybe you're underneath mental stress. So there's all these different things that can come in and can impact your ability to go through. So, okay, well, I couldn't do as much this time around as I was able to last week. And so I can see where that can be frustrating to people. But that's also where I have to go back to my idea of you have to train for what you are training for. So if you go through and you're lifting lighter, to be able to go immediately back with very little break in between to shock your muscles and try to do an extremely heavy weight when you haven't been training extremely heavy, your muscles have to go through and get back to that adaptation to remember, oh, this is what it's like to lift heavy. And so maybe you're actually doing better than you thought you were. But so again, it's all these little different factors that can come in. And that's where I think a lot of people can get frustrated because with all of this compounding, then you're coming along and you're saying, hey, I'm not getting the results that that I was expecting to get, or the pounds aren't coming off the way that I wanted to. But by going through and maintaining, so even if you're not going through and getting the results, the physical results that you wish that you could see, to be able to go back to it time and again and again. And so again, I've been doing this for 12 years now, and I still don't feel like that I'm not where I would like to be, but yet I grant myself grace and I'm going back. I went today, I'm going back tomorrow, and I'm going to go back the day after that and the day after that. And so I think a lot of people could see that as, oh, you're hitting your head up against a brick wall. But no, because I'm improving myself in different areas. And so what you're building there is you're building inner strength, you're building perseverance, and all of that will carry over to other aspects of your life. So as I was contemplating this, knowing that I was going to come in here and talk with you about it, it is kind of one of those things where I'm still building, and maybe that's, so for me, that's what bodybuilding is really about. It's not necessarily getting magazine ready. It's not because I want to be in a competition. It's because I'm trying to build a better version of myself when it feels like the world is constantly trying to tear us down. So instead, I'm trying to go through and build both myself up and other people up. And so whenever I go through and I see people at the gym, especially, newbies, I want to try to be as encouraging as I can, because again, it's not a zero-sum game. Their successes, that doesn't take away anything from me. And to be able to go through and to build that positive gym culture that I think we need, because no organization is a monolith. I mean, there's absolutely going to be jerks in there. But at the same time, I think the majority of people, they're also wrapped up in their own stuff. They're not paying attention to you. And that's what a lot of people think is, oh, I don't look like I belong there. And that's okay. We're all so wrapped up in our own stuff. No one's paying attention to you. And so more than likely what you're going to find, and I'll be willing to guarantee this, the biggest and strongest guy in that gym is going to be the one who's most likely to help you because they've been doing it for a long time. One, it is a little bit of a boost to the ego for someone to come along. There was just a quick story. I work out by myself. I don't use a spotter, and so depending upon what exercises I'm doing, there's a seated press where you can do where it's almost like a dip machine. So you're going through and you're pressing the weight down instead of being underneath it. So, but if you sit on the machine backwards and you lean forward, you turn it into a chest exercise. So it's basically emulating like a decline press. But because again, you're not underneath the weight, I can go through and I can really load up the weight on that. And because if things go wrong, then I can I let the weight drop up, if that makes sense. But so I can go through and I can load it all up. And so on that, I can move some pretty serious weight. And there was at one point where I got done and there was a fellow gym goer who I see on a regular basis. And he was like, man, leave some weights for the rest of us, man. You're lifting way too, we're lifting way too much weight. And I mean, I shook his hand and said, thank you. And it was just like, oh, yeah, it did my heart so well oh yeah, hey, people can see the progress. So, I mean, I guarantee that if you go through and you find that big, strong guy, and you ask him, hey, how do I use this machine? They're going to be willing to help you because, again, more than likely, and especially if there's someone like me, man, I know how hard it is. I know how difficult this journey is, especially for people who feel like they don't belong. And those are the people that need lifting up all the more. And so it's just about treating each other like human beings and being encouraging, doing all that sort of stuff. So what I've discovered, the muscle that I have built the biggest and the strongest in this whole 12-year journey that I've been on, and that's my muscle of compassion, to be able to want to help people and to come on here and talk with you for an hour a month. It's a joy that I look forward to, and I look forward to talking to you. And so I thank you for giving me this opportunity to come in here and talk, because it feels like a lot of times I'm kind of doing this by myself. I'm doing this on my own. So by being able to come in here and talk with you, again, it's gym buddies. It's, hey, I've been trying this and this has been working or this hasn't been working. So so again, I know I probably say this too much, but man, thank you for providing me with this venue.
Generosity and sharing your time and your expertise and your insights and your speculations. It's very important. And when I'm able to, because now with my Parkinson's, I have a new set of challenges. I try the things you suggest, and I've gotten great benefit from some of them. And some of them are things I experimented with in the past that didn't work for me then, but they've worked for me now. Or some of them are variations of things I've been doing. It's like, hey, I'm surprised I didn't think of doing this before. And it is a hard journey, and failure is a great teacher. Like right now, mostly because of balance rather than strength, I can't lift a lot of the weights I was lifting because I don't have the balance to do that. So I'm taking this as an opportunity to learn about low poundages, high reps, which I kind of avoided for much of my life. So here's my opportunity to experiment with that. And I'm finding that done correctly, that gives you a great burn, and it'll tire you out and really work your muscles hard. So now, since that's what I can do, that's what I'm doing. And when I can't do that, I'm sure there's something else I haven't tried that I can do. I'm not going to give up on the weightlifting or the bodybuilding or the strength training or whatever we're going to call it, because that's been part of me since childhood. And it's something I truly enjoy about life and the things that I do. But I'm not going to let anything that happens to me get me down, because there's always a way. There's a will, there's a way. And even if physically I can't do a lot of things anymore, my mind, as long as I control my mind, I can visualize doing it. And I can do isometrics and isotonics, and I can use my muscles resistance to each other to build muscle and strength and fitness.
Well, so I was curious about that. And so again, if balance is your issue, What about, and so I know you said that was part of the reason why you haven't gone back to the public gym was because you want to get your balance more under control.
Yeah,
And
my feet have been swelling.
okay,
Tried all the
so,
massaging my legs, elevating my legs for long periods of time, and those type of solutions that people have been recommending. So far, it doesn't seem to be doing any good, and I'm a fall risk because of that. So if I'm carrying heavy weights and I topple over on top of other heavy weights, with heavy weights in my hand, wouldn't be a good.
sure.
I can still lift the weights, but I can't perform movements uh, strictly and correctly.
So there are, and so there's always the big debate as far as, what's the superior, lifting method. And they all have their place for
Yes.
whatever time, depending upon what you're attempting to do. So people will say, well, so free weights are better, barbells are better, dumbbells are better, machines are better. But again, they all go through and they serve their purpose. So what I'm curious, like, so if you were doing an overhead press for you, probably not the smartest exercise to attempt to do at this point. But what if you were locked in to, or locked in, sitting down, say at a machine, to be able to go through and then do an overhead press where you're allowed to stabilize because you're sitting down and you have your back, say, against the bench, to do an overhead press using a machine. Is that something that you've considered?
I would, yes, when I get my balance, there is a gym not that far from here that's affordable, that has machines. So that's an option I will explore if I can improve my balance.
Okay, good, because that was I've kind of been waiting for you to report back, because I'm curious to see how much the gym has changed since, because I know you've been working out in the home. How long have you been working out at home as opposed to working in a commercial gym?
Uh, it's uh, it's the last time I worked in a commercial gym was, I believe, in the 90s. And when I lived in Pennsylvania in the 2000s, I think the very early 2000s, we had a basement, and I just built the gym in the basement. So I had two universal machines, I had a few benches, I had a leg press machine, I had a squat rack, and I had hundreds of pounds of weight to all the denominations. So I had the gym there. But in the commercial gym, I think it was somewhere in the 90s, probably in the late 90s.
Okay. Because I mean, I'm curious to see how stuff has changed, since you've been in there. But again, so this is where everything it does, it has its place. And so if you go through, and so the difference, just real simply. So if you go through and you're lifting, let's say a barbell bench press, so you're not just lifting the weight straight up and down. You have to be able to control that weight to make sure that it's not drifting too far, say over your eyes or down low to your stomach. So so I guess you're controlling it in three different planes. I think I'm describing that correctly. But then you can also go through, you can do the exact same exercise, but if you perform it with dumbbells, then each hand is forced to work independently. So therefore, it has to, again, you can't cheat your way, or the weakness is not quite so exposed. If one side is stronger than the other, it's going to show up pretty prominently if you're going through and you're using dumbbells. But then also, if you're using a barbell bench press, then you're locked into, your hands are fixed. If you're using a dumbbell bench press, you can go through and you can do a 45-degree angle or a 90-degree angle where you're lifting it more with like a hammer lift. So each one of those has its own place. But then also, if you're going through and you're using a machine, again, you're only moving it from X to Y, as opposed to, so you don't have to control the Z axis. If I'm wrong about that, shout me out down in the comments. Go, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I think that's
I follow what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense.
right. So if you're
If I had to control the movement, and that's where I think the machines would be, I'd be able to use raw strength to move it as much as I can. Whereas if I had control, the chance of my unbalancing would be greater. And like with the Parkinson's, the weakness is very strange. You lose control of your body, mostly my hands at this point, where they'll start shaking uncontrollably. So if I was fixed in my movement, right now what I'm doing for the weights in the hands is I'm using hand grips. When my hands were not doing what they're currently doing, I had purchased a wide variety of them. Some of them like 175 pounds, or more. Now I'm using the easier ones because I have arthritis too. So I'm using the lightest of the hand grips. I'm using kettlebells, 5 pounds, 8.9 pounds, and 15 pounds. And then I'm using dumbbells with in between poundages. And I'm using D weights. I've never seen them anywhere. They were in some sporting goods shop that went out of business, but they look like the letter D, and they're made of metal, and they're very heavy. And I have those in 5 pounds, 8 pounds, and 10 pounds. So I like switching up the weights that I use, but I'm staying in those lightweight, for most of my exercise. I was doing for a while more than that, but I can't do that anymore without getting a balance. But I have to come back and use a lighter weight, so I just do more repetitions.
And so again, as not to, I want to put this correctly. I don't want to feel like I'm shaming anyone, but also at the same time, thank you for coming on here and talking about this, because I don't want to use the whole no excuses thing. I think that's a junk argument, but you're on here. You've been dealing with the Parkinson's, you've been dealing with the arthritis, but yet you're still finding motivation to go out there and stay at the top of your game. And I find that tremendously inspiring. And I hope others do as well. So if they can come, and so again, hey, if he can do it, you can do it. Again, everyone's situation is different, and I don't want to discount any of that. But so again, this is me coming along going, hey, if I went through and didn't like my physical appearance and decided to go on this journey that took me 12 years, again, my goal is to inspire people. And hopefully, and so I think that your journey is equally as inspiring. And this is where the one thing that I would tell everyone is that, again, it's never too late. It's, weightlifting, exercise is for everyone. I think everyone needs to be included in it. Everyone needs to be welcomed in it. And so, because it goes through and improves everyone's lives in ways that you couldn't even imagine.
I agree. Thank you for your kind words. I follow my passions, and my passions fuel my purpose. And the people I enjoy, the things I enjoy, the activities I enjoy. We don't live forever, so I like to enjoy them as possible. And for whatever reasons, whether it makes sense to anybody else or not, struggling with weights is something I've enjoyed forever. So I will enjoy it the best of my ability as long as I'm here.
Well, so man, we've covered a lot here in this time, but I also want to give people something practical to take away with. So thank you for letting me come on here and tell my story. I do hope that everyone can find a way to go through and develop this mindset to be able to go through and embrace failure, and how failure is not necessarily a bad thing, man. That ability to go through and embrace that. The edge of that is where improvement is. And so you have to be willing to brush up against that line to know what you're physically capable of. But so I don't like whenever I have to go through, and I wish what I'm going to do is after we get done here, I'm going to send you a link to a TikTok video. And if you could include it in the video's description, so that way people will know what I'm talking about. There's a young lady that does a thing. So her name is, it's Venus Fit is who she is on TikTok. But she goes through and she explains an exercise that I have been attempting So, and I understand balance with you is going to be an issue, but if you can go through, and this is something that if you can go through and possibly develop it, we'll just have to see. But there is an exercise, I had never heard of it before, and so she goes through and she breaks it all down in that, and it's called the traveling ape, APE, the traveling ape. And it is pretty much what it sounds like, in where you go into this deep Asian squat. So that's where you're really going through, and it's a deep as squat as you can get. But what she says is that this traveling ape exercise that you do, it's hitting 5 different areas in one single exercise. So it's going through and it's helping with your ankle dorsal flexion. It's helping with your hip flexion. It's helping with your thoracic spine mobility, your ankle. Oh, this is a difficult. Your ankle proprioception. So I had to go through and look that up. And so basically, proprioception is the ability to know where your feet are without looking at them. So it keeps you from being a fall risk. So that is something that is extremely important. And then your single leg stability. So what she's saying is that the traveling ape is this exercise that allows you to do all 5 of these things in one single movement. And so what it is, so you're in a deep squat, and then you're basically just moving from side to side where you're emulating a silverback gorilla. So it was a thing where I attempted to do this, but what I had to do is there's a beginner level that you can get to, and that's where I'm thinking this would be able to help you out. So they have, at my gym, they have these big giant boxes. Rogue, I think, is the name of the company that makes them. And so they're basically, it's you can jump up on them, things like that. But so I keep that in front of me, and then I go through and you perform this side to side movement where you're going through and you're flexing your legs in this. So you look like a big giant gorilla in there floating around. But
I will try it.
Okay, yeah. So I'll go through and I'll send you the link. And so again, this was something I could not squat all the way down in order to be able to perform this. But so when I went through and put my hands on the box, then I'm able to move a little bit better laterally. And just by doing a few reps in this, man, my heart rate skyrocketed. I'm going through, and so I'm hoping that this will go through and make me a little bit more flexible. So just to give it, so for everyone that's sat through, the hour that we've been here, I want to go through and give you something practical. And so that traveling ape, boy, that's something that has tremendously helped me. The single leg stability is something that I am not very comfortable with. Basically, as a good general rule, any exercise that has an Eastern European country's name in it is designed to torture you. So whether it's the Bulgarian split squats, those things can piss off. I do not like those at all. But a Romanian deadlift, again, anything, Russian twists, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I have a lot of difficulty trying to perform a Bulgarian split squat, and I'm hoping maybe that this traveling ape will help me develop my muscles enough to where I'll be able to do that. So I'll go through, I'll send that link to you, so that way you can include it in the video, so that way people can go through and check it out themselves. And she explains it a lot better than I did.
Awesome. I look forward to watching that, and I look forward to posting it, and I look forward to trying it if I can. One of the things that's happened since I developed the arthritis on the spine was I don't always know where my legs are in space and time. And that's a weird feeling, believe me.
I'm sure. So great. Maybe this can go through and help you with that. And then again, since we're living in that golden age, you can go through and just do a quick Google search for, and I haven't written down because I'm not that good, but proprioception. Again, so that's where you can find out. So that's where you're knowing where your feet are without having to look down at them.
New adventure. Thank you very much.
Good.
Now, how can people find you? And people should know that in addition to being my gym buddy and a good friend, you are also my favorite Greek mythology graphic novelist. So how can people go find your stuff, not only your your daily activities and exercise, but you're creative with stuff as well.
Sure. Yeah. So, how you tag me on Facebook is probably the absolute best way for people to find me. And then just going over to Amazon, there's not a lot of Ryan Foley authors, but it's pretty easy to find my stuff on there. Whether it's the Shadow Blades, whether it's my Clown Zero novel series, or you can find the graphic novels that were published by Campfire Graphic Novels, which include a story about Hercules, story of Eros and Psyche, which is a romance. So all of those are all available over there on Amazon, and so that way they can see and they can read the book that got us in connection with one another.
And also, I still lament the fact that you weren't allowed to develop that universe further because it had very, very strong and developing foundations that tied everything together in Greek mythology. And it was a shame to kind of leave that dangle in midair.
You and me both. Boy, the money would have been great. But the other book that unfortunately I wrote but never got into production. I have to assume maybe because it was either too big or too ambitious. But I went through it. There's somewhere out there, they must have it in their archives. There is an unpublished script of mine that was a comic book adaptation of the Odyssey.
Oh,
and
wow.
I went through and did a check, and man, I don't know if I'll be able to squeeze it in before we talk next month, but I did check, and we should talk after Christopher Nolan's movie, The Odyssey, gets released in theaters. So if you're able to go and see, I can't guarantee I'll be able to make it that weekend. We'll see, but I'm sure, hey, that should be a movie that you and I should probably talk about just as fans of the genre. And we should probably talk about that at some point.
And to talk to Campfire, so maybe it might be a good time to release that now that the movie's coming out.
Yeah, no doubt.
Ryan, thank you for everything. I enjoy our conversations. I look forward to them. I wish you well in all things and great success in all your endeavors. And we will PM in a little while.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. Good to talk to you again.
Same here. Take care. Bye-bye.